Hey everyone, it's Dr. Julie. It's awesome to be here. So I wanted to pop in. Someone had asked the question the other day or made the comment about Epstein-Barr as it relates to thyroid issues and autoimmune issues. And I thought it was a great time to cover a really important topic. So I know that there are a lot of people out there in the blogosphere and even a lot of naturopathic doctors and functional medicine doctors who talk about Epstein-Barr being the root cause, like the real reason why we end up with thyroid disorders or autoimmune conditions. And I really wanted to address this because unfortunately, you guys, that's just not a root cause. And a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to treat Epstein-Barr among other chronic viral infections or parasitic issues. And although the organisms are there and they do make an impact on our physiology, what you really need to understand is that they're not the root cause. And in fact, a lot of the therapies that are used to address Epstein-Barr, other viruses, chronic infections, actually make the cell energy issues worse, which means they put you more into the pit and can make it even harder to actually regain your vitality, which is ultimately the goal. I think that's been missed, though. I mean, I can just be honest. In the healing world, we've foregone this goal of retaining vitality and gone to this goal of making lab values appear normal. And they're not always the same thing. So Epstein-Barr, as many of you know, is often either the leftovers of having had mono or been exposed to mono, which most people didn't actually have active, and then developing later in life. You know, there's this whole I would say in the health world, there's this mantra that then it creates this immune system dysfunctional wear down. Now, although those chronic viruses can be a big part of how our body functions, what you need to understand is that in order for the body to be burdened by a virus in a chronic way, you actually have to have a low energy state to precede it. So what that means is your body is innately amazing and can actually do wondrous things to protect you. And viruses, pathogens of all types actually, they look for a host that's weak enough to support their vitality. Now, the way that they operate is that a lot of them act in a parasitic nature. So they actually draw off of you in order to keep themselves going. In order for them to survive doing that, you actually have to have an immune system and a body that's so busy trying to do other things that it doesn't really notice them. And so what happens is we begin before they get to have their purchase and their robust placement in our body, we begin at a low energy state. So what that means is your cells are suffering from having to maintain this survival mode. And one of the biggest and first impacts, I'll tell you guys, of what your body perceives to be chronic stress is that your immune system gets really dysfunctional. One of the first organ systems actually consumed by the body in stress is the thymus. So this master gland for immune system regulation is one of the first places. It is estimated that most people by the time they're 30 now have very little thymus activity because the stress load that their body perceives has been so high for so long by the time they're 30 that they're no longer actually having adequate immune system function. So that's the first thing. Because if we're talking about being degraded by a chronic infection, one of the things you have to get there is you have to have an immune system that's too tired to focus. And that's where most people already are. Now, what happens is that the longer we stay in stress states, I mean, you guys, what is cortisol? It's actually an immune modulator, but it suppresses inflammation. So a lot of people end up in this state where their body has inflammation, but part of it's being suppressed by the stress response. The cells are in survival mode. They're in actually really low energy states. They're producing byproducts, which are really toxic to the immune system, like lactic acid and ammonia, and it's further degrading the immune system. Now, the other impact, which no one ever talks about, is that there's this whole idea that you have this extracellular matrix. It's all the sort of empty space that surrounds all your cells. The Germans have studied it beautifully. But the extracellular matrix needs to be fluid and slightly crystalline and really in a high state of function for you to maintain robust health. But the longer that we stay in a stress state, that extracellular matrix gets really gummy. You know, it becomes like rubber. So now nothing's moving through it. So now the immune system's even further hindered. Well, guess what loves to hide out in places that are kind of gummy and dark and dank? Viruses, bacteria, mold, parasites. they think it is the most ideal environment. And for them, it is. For them, that is like peak survival territory. So all of that precedes these conditions. Now, what's sad is that then people run these studies and then they say, oh my gosh, that's what it is. You have Epstein-Barr. Now we've discovered the cause of your condition. But it's not the cause. And then they start treating with antiviral therapies. Well, the challenge there is this. A lot of antiviral therapies are very cold and bitter from a Chinese medicine perspective. And a lot of those therapies then actually further injure the spleen. You want to know why so many people get so tired? Is that already so much of the things in their life are injuring the organ systems from that cold, damp perspective. And so then you stack on cold, damp therapies. Then people do these rebuilding therapies. I've always thought it was the most insane thing to do therapies to tear you down and then we'll build you up later. Because we can't ever do it perfectly. And so we know that we're going to put someone at a deficit. Even in the Chinese medicine model of chronic infection, the actual oriented goal is to build robustness in the body in a way that doesn't feed the organisms. Well, guess what? When you feed the cells according to your biological needs and whatever the patterns are in your body, you can actually feed the cell preferentially over the organism. What's happening there is that you're building the ability of the body to self-repair and self-regulate ahead of feeding the organisms. So what feeds these organisms? Well, you guys, a lot of the organisms actually live off of protein fragments. You know, there's a lot of misnomer advice going around that says that they live off of sugar. And I'm here to tell you that actually every cell system in the world lives off of sugar. But what's funny about these pathological organisms is that a lot of them have adapted to living off of anything. And in fact, like even when it comes to cancer cells, I know we're not talking about cancer, but cancer cells actually preferentially do better on protein and fat than they do on sugar. So a lot of these organisms, what they really thrive off of is dysfunctional operation of your cell systems. So when we aren't functioning at our optimal, we produce all these byproducts, and these byproducts then are perfect fuel for these organisms. So again, when you look at that, some people look at it and go, the organism's the problem. And I look at it and say, well, wait a minute. If I try to kill off the organism in a body that's too weak to do the process, then the body's staying in the weak state because I haven't done anything to build the body, then I might kill off some of them. But here's the thing about, well-adapted viruses, bacteria, parasites. You guys, they're adapted to survival in really amazing ways. So they just go either dormant or they dive deeper and they just wait till the assault is over and they come back out. That's why people are saddled with chronic infections. I should know. Most of my clinical career, I did only the hard cases. I mean, I had people with Lyme and co-infections, people with chronic infections. That was who walked through my door every single day. And the therapies that were aimed at obliterating the organism had weakened most of those people because they'd already done that route and had found that, in fact, although the doc was saying like, oh, it's so great, we got that organism under control, they're expressing, yeah, but why am I so tired? Or why do I not sleep? Or why do I have this pain? And then they're told like, oh, that's a byproduct of the organism, so we just have to manage that forever. It's a total crock. The problem is that doc wore them down even further, and now there's way less vitality to work with. The primary goal in healing needs to be to restore the vitality to the system. Those organisms do not know how to survive in a body that has robust vitality, in a body that has cells that can do amazing things, in a body that doesn't have an immune system that's being broken down by stress hormones every single day, in cells that are actually thriving and able to function at their peak performance. That's how you beat the organisms, not by killing them. This kill-based philosophy has proven itself to be really inadequate for a really long time, and yet for some reason we're still using it. I think it's because so often the patients feel like, but if you're not killing them, then what are we doing? And the conventional medical model kills everything, so they throw antibiotics at viruses, for gosh sakes. The philosophy there is just like, if you're not killing it or cutting it out, we don't know what in the world to do. And that has proven to be true. They don't. And so if you are sitting there thinking, I need to do my Epstein-Barr protocol, I need to really get on that, or any other chronic virus or chronic infection, I really encourage you to consider, have you built your system You know, what's in place to actually build the cell energy? What's in place to actually restore the immune system? Not immune boosters. So I'm not talking astragalus, which isn't a great, you shouldn't take that on its own. Sorry for the pause, but I see it too much. People just throwing astragalus at the problem. Not big doses of vitamin C. You know, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actually changing the terrain that allows the immune system to recover. To do that, you have to turn off the chronic stress response. And I'm also not talking about the adrenal glands. They are part of that stress response. But the truth is, you guys, there are bundles in your nervous system that produce the stress hormones, whether the adrenals are playing or not. So it becomes really complex really quickly. So what's in place to address that? You know, what's there to actually bring you back to vitality? What's there to actually nourish your brain? What's there to actually encourage your liver to be able to handle the metabolic byproducts of either die-off or the damage to the cells that's already happening? What's there to get your cell systems to function at their optimal capacity? Because if there aren't comprehensive plans that are aimed specifically at that, more than they're aimed at killing the organism, I can tell you that your plan is not going to make it. No, Laura, like, you can't just throw ashwagandha at it either. That's the problem. People always want to do that, but then ashwagandha is a strong adaptogen. But if you don't have other things in place to restore the cell systems and keep those cells in a state of receptivity to taking in the information, it's also going to fall short. It's not going to work. And that's why I think so many people suffer so long, because there isn't a one thing. Like, there isn't the, like, take this little mixture and it'll build your cells while we tear down the organism. It doesn't work. Like I said, in classical Chinese medicine, if you want to treat someone for chronic infections, you don't try to kill the organism at all. That's right. I said that. You don't try to kill the organism at all. You actually nourish the cells and organs first. And you don't do that with big prompters like ashwagandha up front. You don't use things like ginseng. Please don't use ginseng. Don't let anyone give you ginseng if you have any chronic infections that you know of. It feeds the organism, because that's the other thing. A lot of these therapies are actually, they've been proven to be ideal fuel for the organism. Think about that. You're taking something because you're trying to boost your energy, and in the process, you're feeding the organism. It's really scary. And this is why we can't take these treatment protocols. You know, people post treatment protocols online, and it's like crazy. Medicinal mushrooms are another interesting thing, and maybe not the best time for me to discuss them, but again, that's not going to actually build your cell systems. Do they have other effects? Yes, because sometimes you need to build dopamine. Are they my favorite? It depends on the person. Again, I don't think that they're a first line defense. If your base is not built, so this is my perspective, your base has to be cell resilience. And that requires attention to the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual sides of the person. You have to be restoring biochemical strength at the cell level before you go diving in. And so this has to be addressed first. If you have no base, I mean, think about it. You're going to build this amazing structure, but everyone goes right to the building. Like, they don't go into the foundation. And if the foundation isn't there, you've got nothing. It's like you've built a house on matchsticks. And you're just hoping you've placed enough there to keep it stable. And that's not happening. And Laura, to your point, here's my perspective. I am functionally medicine trained, you guys. I mean, I have my ND, I have a master's in Oriental medicine. I got functional medicine training after. I never practiced it after I learned it. Not for very long anyway. And the reason is that the model has some serious flaws. And with all of my other training, especially the Chinese medicine background, which is really about honoring the alchemy of the body, I found that functional medicine does not honor the alchemy of the body. It unfortunately almost throws it out the window. And that's why I pretty quickly ditched it as a model, because it was not going to get people healed. It was going to get symptoms managed at best. And a lot of times it was actually going to create bigger problems because of the methods being used. You have to take each case and find out what the body pattern is doing, because there isn't like one thing. It's not like, oh, everyone with chronic fatigue has this pattern and you just do X, Y, and Z. That is not how the body works. And all of the ancient doctors knew it. That's how I was trained. Like in medicine, and I was trained, you have to understand the pattern. A symptom is not a pattern. A symptom is the symptom. Patterns are way complex. And there's this thing that's happened in medicine where we're not honoring the incredible divine complexity of our body. And as a result, like everyone's looking for like, just give me that one thing. And that one thing is not getting us healed. And that's why so many people are spinning their wheels for so long. The body is so dynamically complex. And the minute that we honor that, magical things start to happen. And so there isn't a one thing, but there are ways to identify the patterns, leading, I do this with people by running through like many, many, many different steps till I can see that picture, but I won't take action until I see the picture, because the picture is so important, and because otherwise we waste time and we waste body effort. The way I think about it is, if we dive into a treatment plan and we don't know what the patterns are, you're giving your body complex instructions, right? So you're telling it, it's like someone goes, I want to get to the store, and you don't bother to find out where the store is, you just start giving them directions. That's kind of what a lot of medicine is. Like, we've never bothered to find out where we're headed or what we're trying to address, but we start giving directions to where. It's just like, oh, turn right, turn left, turn right, turn left. It's so confusing. And our bodies are so magical that they really try to meet every need that we put out there for them. And so unfortunately, we waste a ton of valuable body vitality operating this way. So that's what I don't want you guys to do. I don't want you to waste body vitality energy. And I don't want you to get hung up on these diagnoses. Like, oh, well, it's Epstein-Barr. I've heard so many people say that. Like, it's almost like a deflating thing. Like, oh, well, it's Epstein-Barr, now we've got a really big problem and I don't know that we'll ever heal it. And that's just, I don't want you caught up in those places. Patterns are complex interplay between the cell systems throughout your body and the organ systems. So it's a word that I use to describe the complex ways that these systems interact and then where they can go sideways. And so you have to address that, or otherwise, you could call it the root. You must be addressing the root. And the root for everyone is going to be slightly different because you're unique and you've had your own experiences. And so until you know where the root is, you can't make good judgment calls on where the emphasis should be put, because otherwise you're just guessing. So just know this, you guys. Chronic infections are not like a life sentence. And trying to kill off the organism is going to waste a lot of your vitality and a lot of your time. Building the body vitality in a way that does not feed the organism is the first and most important step. If you have thyroid disorders and someone says you've got Epstein-Barr, if you have an autoimmune thyroid disorder or any other autoimmune disorder and someone's saying, well, it's your Epstein-Barr, I can also tell you it's not. Autoimmune disorders are where the body's communication has gone sideways because it's been running on stress hormones for so long that the cells have dropped into such low energy states and the immune system has gotten so compromised, and you've got so much endotoxin in your blood from having so much dysfunction in your gut that it's going to the weakest places. And then you end up with this confusion. You don't restore the confusion by trying to get rid of the organism. You don't restore the confusion by piling hormones on the problem. You restore the confusion by bringing order and energy back to the body system so your body can self-regulate. This is so problematic. You're right, functional medicine, Shannon. But Shannon, I always love your comments. It is so guiding so many people in the wrong ways. And unfortunately, it's becoming like this gold standard, as if people think it's doing something unique. And it's really just following the Western medical model, but throwing supplements at the problem. And that's a really scary model to me, because the Western medical model does not work. So just know, you guys, you can heal. Like, you can really heal. Is it simple? No. But is it possible? Yes. It just takes putting the emphasis in the right places. So Debbie, you have to know where your particular root is. Now, that's something that I do by actually getting in and diving in and assessing that per person, because it's not like a one place. It's not like, ooh, just run this test and you'll know. You have to be able to assess the entirety of the person to see where that is. But once you understand that, then you can address the root and be able to actually treat what's happening at the cell. It's about, it's like 1,000 different steps. You have to know which one to start with. So you can, Kim, set up a call with me. because I can see if this is something that I can help you with. Because finding the root, again, it's not something that you find like just in a book or stumble upon on a survey online, you know. It's actually being able to get in there and assess the totality of the person and your experiences and where you've been and what you've already done and how it's all worked and where the emphasis needs to be put and where the stress points are and what's the status of your nervous system and how are your cells responding, and all of those things matter. And I think this is why so many people get missed, is that in some ways, you know, the medical model wants to throw things at it. And then on the side, we want it to be like, I just needed to do X. But the reality is you have to align the cell systems, turn off the stress response, regulate the hormonal systems, get the cells to receive nourishment. Again, you have to do all these steps and make sure that you've done them in the order that's correct for the person. It's all possible. So I want you guys to know that. But most of all, I came here today to make sure that you knew not to get hung up on the Epstein-Barr chronic infection. I've got this, so it's going to be with me forever, or trying to kill off everything treatment plans, because they're really not working and they're going to waste a lot of your body energy, and they're actually most of the time going to weaken your organ systems in the process. Do not let people just throw stuff at you. You know, like, not, I mean, literally, but figuratively too. Don't let them just throw supplements at you. Don't let them just use that as their model without being able to answer the question, like, where's the root? You know, it's not just that why do I have that deficiency? Why aren't my cells using those nutrients correctly? Why aren't my cells taking in nutrients? Why aren't I digesting? Doesn't that make an impact? If I'm not digesting, then how come we're going to just plug the holes with supplements? That's a great one to ask. If you've got a practitioner that's just shoving supplements at you and they're saying, oh, we're solving your deficiencies. How? How are you solving my deficiencies? Because this is obvious that I'm not assimilating nutrients. How are you fixing that problem? How are you making sure that it's entering my cell? How are you doing all these? It's so important. So I'm reading Debbie's comment. And I'm glad you mentioned the genes. Real quick, I'll just put this as an aside. I am not a subscriber to the gene-based models that are being promoted today. I know a lot of people want it to be that, but I have a couple issues with it. Number one, genes are not static. They're malleable and flexible. There are a lot of things that go into their expression. Number two, gene expression is modulated by a lot of things. One great example is methyl groups attaching to the local points of the genes. This has been studied and shown to happen in trauma. It's also been shown to be inherited through generations. That when those gene focal points are stimulated by the methyl groups, then the gene function is altered. So all of these companies are striving to give you like the perfect template for your health by testing your genetic makeup. You guys, I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into it, because there are a lot of factors that they can't test for that are manipulating that data. And I've seen a lot of people adopt whole treatment plans because they think that it's all based off of their gene expression. But genes are strongly influenced by the stress state of your body, the cell state of your body. They're actually influenced by them, the life rhythms you're occupying, all kinds of factors that are outside of you, even in your ancestral past. And what I have seen is that if you restore functional vitality to the body, a lot of the things that those tests told you were true turn out to be false. So I just want people to know that, because I also see that's another big avenue where people doing all this genetic testing and saying, oh, I can't do this and can't do that and can't do this because of my genes, because they operate this way. And I think that it's actually kind of a blind alley in medicine that is going to turn out to not have had the, let's just say, robust, solid nature that it's being promoted to have. We have to have cells that can function at their peak capacity to be able to heal. That is the biggest goal. Yeah, so the MTHFR is another one. I'll do a whole other video on methylation, because it's actually a whole topic. And again, we get caught in the nuances of what those results mean. I see this happen to people all the time. Oh, because I have that gene. Guess what? I think everyone has the methylation defect gene, and I think it turns on and off. And I've seen, people who show evidence of that. It turns on and off, on and off. And guess what? It's also supposed to. And the other thing is that it's not predictive. This is another, we lock ourselves into these belief patterns where we're like, now I'm so flawed and this isn't unsolvable unless I'm doing X, Y, and Z, so I'm stuck. And quite honestly, I don't believe that. And again, the methylation, going back to what I said before, just the methylation has a strong association with our personal stress and trauma and inherited stress and trauma in familial lines. So let's just take a moment and consider the degree of emphasis that's being put on it in the medical community right now, and the fact that we're not in any way effectively dealing with the accumulated stress and trauma throughout society. You can start to see some links. So I don't want you guys to get caught up in that either. Like, ooh, I'm doomed because of X. The fact is that even with an MTHFR mutation, you can restore the cells to energy, you can reclaim vitality, you can reclaim detoxification capacity, you can restore the immune system, you can do it all. If you're addressing the root for that person. So watch for those blind alleys, you guys. They really can catch us up, and man, can they waste our time, and they can waste our energy, and they can fill us with fear. And that's the other thing. We don't need any more reasons to be afraid. We need reasons to claim our victory, because it is a time for us to claim our vitality and victory. Rebecca, set up a call with me, and listen to the rest of this, because I was talking about it earlier. There isn't a one thing answer. It would be impossible. The body's too complex for that. It's not like everybody does X. Everybody's got to do something slightly different depending on what their cells are doing and why, and how deep their patterns are, how worn down their vitality is. It's slightly different for each person. And if you don't address it as such, as I was taught in healing, especially when I studied Chinese medicine, all those doctors impressed upon me that we honor the complexity of our body when we recognize that we're all going to have different presentations for different reasons. And they used to say, the same person can walk into the room, you've got 3 people with migraine history, and each of them is going to have a completely different pattern that is creating the migraines. And if you just heard migraine and proceeded with one model for migraine, only one of those 3 people might get better. And the other 2 aren't, because you never paid attention to the why they had them in the first place. And so that's how I operate. I'm always asking, what's the why to what's happening? Because it's so important. Because otherwise, you might be the one, you might be the other people who the pattern wasn't even close to what was being addressed. And so that's why it's so important that we pay attention to that and ditch this model that just kind of blankets everything under one guise or another guise, like the MTHFR. Oh, everyone with it is going to have to do this, and this. It's not true. There's different patterns for each of those people. That's why I don't put a whole lot of stock in the genetic tests, because I've seen too many of those people come in and they're on their specialty, supplements that they got given for that particular condition. And you guys are not any better. When we address the patterns, now often they don't even need those, and they're tons better, because it wasn't the problem in the first place, but it got them stuck in a cycle. And that's a real dangerous spot to be. So ask good questions of yourself, of your healthcare practitioners. And if you guys are ready to actually explore what your patterns are and what it looks like to heal and get out of the pit, I'm here. You're welcome to set up time to talk with me, and we'll look and see if it's time and if it's a good fit. And if I know I can get you to where you want to be, great. But you deserve to not be stuck in these models with limited walls of what's possible, and really actually heal. You're capable of it because you're here, and you deserve it because you're here, and you're beautiful humans on this planet, and your vitality is definitely worth expressing. All right, blessings, guys.